Some marriages begin with a kiss, some begin with a judge's tired voice, a stranger's hand, and a woman swallowing fear because pride will not feed her through winter. Folks like to say love comes easy when two hearts are meant for each other, but out in the mountain country, love often had to hitch itself beside grief and pull through mud first. This is one of those memories, the kind that still smells of wet pine, coffee, and wood smoke when the evening wind turns cold. Sadie Lawson's wedding dress was the brown traveling skirt she had worn for 3 days, its hem stiff with Idaho mud, and her bouquet was a folded paper clutched so hard in her gloved hand that the ink bled against her palm. She stood inside the courthouse at Silver Bend while rain struck the windows like thrown gravel. Her brother's death note lay on the judge's desk beside Miles' hat and a brass wedding ring too plain to shine. Miles stood beside her, tall and silent, his coat dark with rain, his left hand wrapped around a small carved wooden horse. He kept rubbing his thumb over one broken wooden ear as if he could wear grief smooth. Sadie feared him before he ever spoke. Judge Ambrose cleared his throat. "Sadie Lawson, do you take this man?" Her brother, Alice, shifted behind her. "Say it," he whispered. Sadie looked at Miles. His eyes were gray as creek ice, fixed on nothing. "I do," she said, and the words felt like a door locking. "If you're listening from some quiet room tonight, tell me where you are watching from. Leave your country or state in the comments. And if this story touches something tender in you, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep these old frontier stories alive." Miles did not touch her after the judge pronounced them married. He only picked up his hat, tucked the wooden horse into his coat pocket, and said, "Wagons out front," that was all. No blessing, no smile, no promise. Sadie followed him because she had nowhere else to go. The street outside was all mud and wheel ruts, the mercantile windows glowing yellow through rain. A few townspeople stood beneath the awning, pretending not to stare. Mrs. Finch, who ran the boarding house, held one hand over her mouth. Nolan Briggs, the banker who owned half the valley in paper and threats, watched with his thumbs hooked in his vest. "Fine bargain, Vale," Nolan called. "A wife or a debt?" Sadie's face burned. Miles stopped beside the wagon. He did not turn fully, only enough for his voice to carry. "You speak her name again like she's livestock, Briggs, and I'll forget this is a street." The banker's smile thinned. Sadie looked at Miles then, truly looked. His jaw was tight, his eyes lowered, one hand gripping the wagon board hard enough to whiten the knuckles. He still frightened her, but something in her fear shifted, not softened, not yet, only changed shape. He helped her into the wagon without letting his fingers close around hers. They rode north into the mountains with rain sowing. The road shut behind them. The Vale Ranch sat in a narrow valley where dark pines climbed the slopes and a creek ran hard over stone. The house was bigger than Sadie expected, but it had the lonely look of a place that had stopped being cared for. One shutter hung crooked. The porch rails sagged. A rusted dinner bell leaned beside the steps. Smoke rose from the chimney, thin and uncertain. Miles halted the wagon before the house. "You'll have the room at the back," he said. "Door has a latch. I won't trouble you." Sadie gathered her carpet bag. "And what am I expected to be here?" His eyes moved to hers, then away. "Safe." The answer unsettled her more than any command might have. Inside, the house smelled of cold ashes, leather, old coffee, and something shut away too long. A lamp burned low on the table. Dishes sat in a basin. A man's coat hung by the stove. There were no children's voices, no woman's sewing basket in use, no flowers, no curtains at the windows, only emptiness arranged like furniture. Sadie noticed dust on the mantel and one clean place where an object had been moved often. Miles took the wooden horse from his pocket and set it there. It was small enough to fit in a child's palm, carved from pine, with one broken ear and a tail worn smooth. He saw her looking. "Don't touch that," he said. The sharpness made her step back. Then his face changed, as if he had struck something inside himself, I mean, leave it be. Sadie lifted her chin. I heard you. He nodded once. Rooms through there. Her room held a narrow bed, a washstand, one wool blanket, and a window looking toward the barn. The quilt smelled of cedar and disuse. Sadie closed the door and stood with her back against it until her shaking eased. She was 24 years old, married against her will to a man who spoke like stones dropping in a well. Her brother had traded her future for his own escape from debt, calling it protection, calling it necessity, calling it the only decent offer left. Miles Vale had paid the note. That was the truth of it. Yet he had put her in a room with a latch. Sadie sat on the bed and took off her gloves. The ink from the debt note had stained her palm blue-black. She scrubbed at it with spit and a handkerchief until her skin reddened, but the mark would not leave. At dawn, she woke to the sound of an axe. Miles was splitting wood behind the house. His sleeves rolled despite the cold. Sadie watched through the small window. He moved with hard economy, each swing clean and practiced. Near the barn stood a little fenced patch, overgrown and dead. A garden, maybe from another life. Sadie dressed, braided her hair, and went to the kitchen. The stove was nearly out. She found flour in a barrel, salt in a crock, coffee in a tin, and beans soaking in a pot gone sour. She threw the beans to the hens, scrubbed the pot, coaxed the fire up, and made biscuits from what she had. Her mother had taught her to cook on less. Hunger had taught her to waste nothing. Miles came in with an armload of wood and stock. Sadie did not turn. Breakfast is almost ready. I didn't ask you to cook. I didn't ask to marry you. Silence filled the kitchen. Then he set the wood down carefully. Fair enough. They ate at opposite ends of the table. Miles took one biscuit, then another, as if surprised food could still be warm in that house. Sadie noticed his hands. Scarred, capable, one knuckle badly healed. He noticed her noticing and tucked the hand under the table. After breakfast he rose. There's money in the blue jar for household goods. Buy what you need when we go to town Saturday. I don't want your money. You'll need lamp oil. I said I don't want it. He looked toward the cold window. Wanting and needing don't often sit together out here. Then he went out. Sadie washed the dishes hard enough to chip one cup. Days passed in work, because work was easier than fear. Sadie swept rooms that had forgotten footsteps. She beat dust from rugs until gray clouds rose in the yard. She scrubbed the table, mended 2 shirts without asking, and found a stack of children's books tied with string in the pantry. She froze when she saw them. A slate, a primer, a little red scarf. She put them back exactly as they were. That evening, Miles noticed anyway. The pantry door was shut, but he stood before it like a man before a grave. I was cleaning, Sadie said. I know I didn't pry, I know. His voice was quiet, not angry, and that made it worse. At supper, he did not eat. He sat with coffee cooling between his hands. The wooden horse rested on the mantel behind him, its broken ear catching lamplight. Sadie almost asked. She did not. On Saturday, Miles drove her to Silver Bend. The rain had stopped, leaving the mountains washed blue, and the road shining in hollows. Sadie sat beside him with space between them, wide enough for another life. At the Mercantile, Mr. Pevy looked from Sadie to Miles and back again. Well now, he said, Mrs. Vale. Sadie flinched at the name. Miles heard it. His face did not change, but he reached for a sack of flour and put it on the counter. Shall choose what's needed. Mr. Pevy began adding figures. Cash or account? Cash, Miles said. Sadie chose lamp oil, thread, coffee, yeast, beans, sugar, and a length of yellow calico she told herself was for curtains, not hope. At the counter, Mrs. Finch entered with 2 other women. Their whispers were not quiet enough. That's her, Ellis Lawson's sister. Sold into it, more like. Poor thing. Though a woman ought to know her family's character. Sadie's hand tightened around the thread. Miles set the coffee tin down. Mrs. Finch. The women stilled. My wife's character is not town property. Mrs. Finch colored. I meant no harm. Then do none. Sadie stared at the counter until her eyes stopped stinging. Outside, she climbed into the wagon alone. Miles loaded the goods, then stood beside the wheel. You needn't defend me, she said. Yes, he answered. I do, because you bought the right? His face went pale under the weathering. No, he said, because I gave my name before God and a judge, and I won't have it used to shame you. Sadie had no reply to that. The yellow calico went up 3 days later. Sadie cut and hemmed curtains by lamplight, while Miles repaired harness near the stove. Neither spoke much. Rain returned, gentler now, whispering along the roof. When she climbed onto a chair to hang the first curtain, the chair wobbled. Miles moved fast, one hand catching the chair back. Sadie grabbed the window frame. Don't. He stepped away at once. I wasn't. I know, she said, though she did not know. Not fully. The curtain hung crooked. She climbed down and fixed it from the floor, cheeks hot. Miles went back to the harness, but his hands were unsteady. Later, when she came from washing up, she found the chair tighten, its loose leg repaired with a new peg. He had done it without a word. That was how Miles Vale apologized. Winter leaned closer. Frost silvered the trough each morning. Sadie learned the ranch rhythms. Coffee before dawn, hens after first light, bread on Mondays, washing when the creek was not frozen, beans stretched with onion, socks drying by the stove, lamp wicks trimmed before supper. Miles worked from dark to dark. He came in with snow on his shoulders, ate what she placed before him, thanked her every time, and never crossed the invisible line between them. Sometimes, at night, she heard him in the main room after he thought she slept. A floorboard creaked. The mantel gave a soft wooden tap. Then silence. One night, curiosity overcame caution. Sadie opened her door a finger's width. Miles stood before the mantel in his shirt sleeves, holding the carved horse. His head was bowed. Lamplight showed the grief plainly then, stripped of daylight's hardness. He looked younger and older at once. I'm sorry, Eli, he whispered. Sadie closed the door without sound. The next morning she burned the biscuits. Miles ate 2 anyway. You don't have to pretend they're good, she said. They're food. They're rocks. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, then vanished. I've eaten worse. From your own cooking, I imagine. This time the smile stayed a breath longer. It was the first thing in that house that felt like warmth, not made by fire. A week later, trouble came on horseback. Ellis Lawson rode into the yard near dusk, hat low, coat open, smelling of whiskey and coal. Sadie saw him from the kitchen window and felt the old knot pull tight in her stomach. Miles was in the barn. Sadie stepped onto the porch. You shouldn't be here. Ellis grinned. That any way to greet blood? You took Miles's money and left me to pay for it. I saved you from Briggs. Val's got land. You got a roof. Seems I did you a kindness. Sadie's fingers curled around her apron. Leave. Ellis came up one step. I need $20 and oh, Sadie. No. His face hardened. Don't act high now because you sleep under Val's roof. The barn door opened. Miles walked out slowly, holding a lantern. Ellis turned. No quarrel with you. Just talking to my sister. Miles set the lantern on the fence post. She told you to leave. I heard her. Then obey her. Ellis laughed, but it lacked courage. You always this fond of used goods? Sadie went cold. Miles crossed the yard so fast the hens scattered. He did not strike Ellis. He only took him by the coat front and drove him backward until Ellis hit the wagon wheel. Listen close, Miles said, voice low. The only man here who sold family is you. Ride out before I forget Sadie might grieve you. Ellis looked at Sadie then, expecting softness, habit, rescue. Sadie lifted her chin. Go, he went. That night, she sat at the kitchen table long after supper, hands wrapped around a tin cup. Miles stood by the stove, giving her distance. He was not always like that. she said. Miles waited. When our parents died, he tried for a while. Then cards, then drink, then debt. I kept thinking if I worked harder, he'd come back to himself. Miles added wood to the stove. Some folks make a home of being forgiven. Sadie looked up. And you? His hand still on the stove door. I made a home of not needing it, he said. The words settled between them, heavy and honest. That was the first night Sadie did not latch her door. She did not tell him. He did not test it. Snow came early and hard, closing the valley in white. Miles moved cattle down from the upper pasture with 2 hired hands, old Bram and young Toby Pike. Sadie cooked for all 4 men, patched Toby's torn sleeve, and learned Bram liked his coffee black enough to float a horseshoe. The ranch began to sound alive. Roots at the door, laughter once in a while, the scrape of chairs, the ring of Sadie's spoon against a mixing bowl. She made curtains for the pantry window from the last yellow scraps. She cleaned the empty back room, but did not touch the tie stack of children's things. One afternoon, Toby brought in a half-frozen calf wrapped in his coat. Found him by the north fence. Mom. Sadie took one look and pointed. By the stove. Not too close. Bram, bring towels. Toby, rub his legs. Miles, I need warm milk if we have it. Miles obeyed without question. For 3 hours, Sadie fought for that calf with warm cloths, spooned milk, and stubbornness. The little creature shivered, kicked weakly, then finally lifted its head. Toby whooped. Sadie laughed before she could stop herself. Miles stood in the doorway with snow melting in his hair, watching her as if the sound had opened a window in a boarded room. She saw him looking and looked away first. That night he left an extra blanket folded outside her door. Not on her bed, not inside her room. Outside where she could choose it. She took it in and pressed her face to the wool. It smelled of cedar, smoke, and him. The thaw came false in January. Snow softened by day and froze by night. The creek swelled under ice. One evening, while Miles was mending fence near the lower pasture, Sadie found the blue jar nearly empty. Flour was low, coffee too. She counted coins twice, then a third time. There was not enough. She said nothing at supper. Miles noticed. What is it? Nothing. Sadie. The name in his voice undid her more than any question. We need supplies, she said. I can stretch beans, but not coffee, flour, salt, and lamp oil together. Miles leaned back. I'll sell 2 steers. In winter, you'll get cheated. Likely, there must be another way. He looked toward the mantel. Sadie followed his gaze. Beside the wooden horse lay a silver pocket watch she had rarely seen him use. It was engraved, old, valuable. No, she said. He looked at her. You were thinking of selling it. It's only a watch? No, it isn't. The room went quiet. Miles stood and took the watch from the mantel. He opened it. Inside was a tintype of a young woman with dark hair, smiling faintly, and a little boy with solemn eyes. Sadie stopped breathing. My wife, Clara, he said. My son, Eli. The names came like stones laid carefully on a grave. I didn't know. No reason you would. What happened? His thumb moved once over the watch rim. Fever, 3 years ago. Took Eli first. Clara 2 days after. Doctor was snowed over the pass. I buried them when the ground was so hard, Bram had to build a fire over it first. Sadie pressed a hand to her mouth. Miles shut the watch. I couldn't keep anything alive after that. Not the garden, not the house, not myself much. Then Briggs came for the lower pasture note. Your brother owed him too. He offered to wipe Briggs' claim if I paid Lawson's debt and married you. Said it would settle both matters clean. Sadie whispered. I told myself I was saving the ranch, maybe saving you from Briggs. But I know what it was. His eyes lifted to hers. Cowardice dressed as duty. Sadie stood very still. Miles set the watch down, I want hold you here. Come spring, if you want an annulment or passage east, I'll arrange it. The offer should have felt like freedom. Instead, Sadie felt the floor tilt. And until spring, this house is yours to govern. My name is yours to use. My hands are yours if you need work done. Nothing else unless you ask it. Sadie looked at the wooden horse, the broken ear, the worn body. A child's toy carried like a wound. I was afraid of you, she said. No, I am still afraid sometimes. His face tightened, but he accepted it. Then she added, but not in the same way. He looked at her then, and something helpless moved through his eyes. Sadie reached for the silver watch and put it back on the mantel. Where you want to sell this, she said. I can sew. Mrs. Pavey wanted curtains. Mrs. Finch's parlor chairs need new covers. I can mend for town women who think I'm beneath them, and charge them double for the privilege. A rough sound left him, almost a laugh, almost pain. You'd do that? I've done harder for less. The next week, Miles drove her to town with a crate of eggs, 3 loaves of bread, and a dignity sharpened by necessity. Sadie walked into the mercantile and asked Mr. Pavey whether his wife still wanted sewing done. Mrs. Pavey came from the back, surprised but not unkind. I suppose I do. My stitches are clean, Sadie said. I charge fair, not cheap. Mrs. Finch, standing near the ribbon shelf, sniffed. Bowl. Sadie turned. Yes, Miles, behind her with a sack over one shoulder, looked down at his boots so no one would see his smile. Work came, not at first from kindness, but from need. Sadie mended shirts, hemmed curtains, repaired quilts, and took in a torn church banner with gold fringe. At night she sewed by lamplight, while Miles sat across from her carving small pegs, mending tack, or sharpening tools. One evening he placed a cup of coffee beside her elbow. She looked up. It's late. You kept mine warm often enough. She wrapped both hands around the cup. Thank you. He sat again. The carved horse watched from the mantel. After a while, Sadie said, Tell me about Eli. Miles did not answer quickly. He liked buttons, he said at last. Couldn't pass one without putting it in his pocket. Clara lost half her dress buttons to him. Sadie smiled softly. He was quiet around strangers. Loud with chickens, thought roosters were generals. The smile broke into something tender. Miles looked at the floor. I haven't said that much in 3 years. I'm glad you did. He nodded once, but his eyes shone in the lamplight. Outside pressure returned when the church sewing circle invited Sadie to bring the repaired banner herself. The invitation was written politely, but Sadie could read a test when it came in ink. The church stood at the edge of town, whitewashed and narrow, with a bell that sounded tired in cold weather. Sadie carried the folded banner in both arms. Miles offered to go in with her. No, she said. This part and do. Inside, 5 women sat around a long table. Mrs. Finch presided over them like a queen of needles. Sadie laid the banner down. I reinforced the corners. The fringe was rotten on the left side, so I reset it. Mrs. Pavey examined the stitches. This is fine work. Another woman nodded. Very fine. Mrs. Finch touched the gold thread. I heard you were married under unusual circumstances. Sadie folded her hands. Most circumstances are unusual to those who aren't living them. A cough hid someone's laugh. Mrs. Finch's mouth pinched. And Mr. Vale? Is he kind? Sadie thought of the room with a latch, the chair leg repaired, the blanket outside her door, Ellis driven from the yard, coffee placed by her sewing hand. He is grieving, she said, and he is trying. The room quieted. Mrs. Finch looked away first. When Sadie stepped outside, Miles was across the street by the hitching rail, pretending to study a loose buckle. He looked up. Well, they'll pay by Saturday. And Sadie walked past him toward the wagon. Mrs. Finch swallowed a lemon and called it conversation. Miles laughed. It startled both of them. For one bright moment, the town, the debt, the forced vows, and the dead winter all seemed to stand at a distance. Then Nolan Briggs came out of the bank. "Vale," he called. A word. Miles' laughter died. Briggs crossed the street with papers in hand. "Lower pasture payment comes due earlier than you recall." Miles took the paper. "Read it." Read it again. "That date's wrong. Contract says otherwise. You changed this?" Briggs smiled. "Careful." Sadie stepped closer. "How much?" "Enough," Briggs said. "Unless you wish to settle another way." His eyes moved over her in a manner that made Miles go still. Sadie had seen men like Briggs in boarding house parlors and courthouse halls. Men who never raised a hand because money did the striking for them. Miles folded the paper slowly. "Well, pay. You have 10 days. On the ride home." Miles said nothing. His silence felt different now, not cold, cornered. That night he took his bedroll from the small room off the kitchen. Sadie stood in the doorway. "Where are you going?" "Line cabin. In this weather." I need to check cattle." "No, you need to run where grief already knows your name." He stopped. The words had come too sharp, but Sadie did not take them back. Miles turned. "Briggs will take the pasture. Then we fight him." "With what?" "With records, witnesses, work. I don't know yet. I brought you into ruin. My brother brought me to ruin. Briggs used it. You." Her voice caught. She steadied it. "You gave me a door with a latch." Miles looked at her for a long time. "I don't know how to be a husband to you," he said. Sadie took one step closer. "Start by not leaving." His hand tightened around the bedroll. Outside, wind scraped snow against the wall. Finally, Miles set the bedroll down. "All right," he said. It was not a vow spoken in church. It was better. It was a man choosing to remain where fear and hope could both see him. They fought Briggs with every scrap they had. Sadie searched the desk and found old receipts tied with twine. Miles rode to Bram's brother, who had witnessed the original pasture note. Mrs. Pavey quietly told them her husband had seen Briggs change dates before. Even Mrs. Finch sent word that church records showed Miles had paid a portion after Clara's funeral, a payment missing from Briggs' paper. But proof cost time, and 10 days shrank fast. On the 8th day, a storm rolled down from the mountains black as iron. Snow fell sideways. The creek roared under ice. Near dusk, Toby Pike rode in shouting that cattle had broken the north fence and scattered toward the ravine. Miles grabbed his coat. Sadie reached for hers. "No," he said. "Too dangerous. The calves won't turn for one rider." "Sadie, I know how to ride. This isn't a town road. And I am not a teacup." For a heartbeat, anger flared between them. Then Miles handed her a lantern. "Stay left of me. If I tell you back, you go back." They rode into the storm. Snow blinded the world. The horses fought drifts up to their knees. Cattle bawled somewhere ahead, frightened and stupid with cold. Sadie's fingers numbed around the reins, but she kept close, swinging the lantern low. They found the break near the ravine. Fence rails splintered under a fallen pine. A calf had slid halfway down the icy bank and lodged against brush. Miles dismounted. "Hold my horse." The bank gave under his first step. Sadie grabbed his sleeve. "Rope." He tied one end around his waist, the other to his saddle horn, and went down. Snow swallowed him to the thigh. The calf bawled. Sadie held both horses, speaking nonsense to them, while wind tore at her skirt. Then Miles slipped. The rope snapped tight. His shoulder struck rock. He made no sound, but Sadie saw pain flash white across his face. "Miles, I'm all right." "You are not." He reached the calf anyway. Got the rope around it. "Pull steady." Sadie wrapped the lead around the horn and urged the horse back. The calf came up in jerks, wild-eyed and shaking. Miles climbed after, but near the top his injured arm failed. He slid. Sadie dropped to her knees, seized his good wrist, and leaned back with all her weight. For one terrible second, they hung between storm and ravine. "Let go," he rasped. "No, Sadie." "I said no." Bram arrived then with Toby, and together they hauled Miles over the edge. Back at the house, Miles' shoulder was badly wrenched, his ribs bruised, and one cut above his brow bled into his eye. Sadie sat him by the stove and cut his shirt away with sewing scissors. "I like that shirt," he murmured. "I didn't." He closed his eyes, almost smiling. She cleaned the cut, wrapped his ribs, bound his shoulder, and warmed broth while the storm battered the windows. His skin was cold under her hands, too cold. She banked the fire high and laid the cedar blanket over him. Near midnight fever took him. He spoke names in his sleep: Clara, Eli, Sadie. The last one made her hands still. Then he began struggling weakly, reaching toward the mantel. "Horse," he whispered. "Ella's horse." Sadie took the carved horse down and placed it in his hand. His fingers closed around it like a child's. "I couldn't save him," he said. "Not awake, not fully. Couldn't even keep the fire lit." Sadie sat beside him until morning, holding a cloth to his brow. When dawn came pale and bitter, Miles woke to find her asleep in the chair, one hand still resting near his. He did not move for a long time. The storm delayed Briggs' deadline by closing the road, but not his greed. 2 days later, he arrived with the sheriff and a paper declaring seizure of the lower pasture. Miles could barely stand. Sadie met them on the porch. Briggs looked pleased. "Where's your husband?" "Inside." "Then fetch him." "No." The sheriff shifted uneasily. "Mrs. Vale, this is legal business." "Then you'll want legal facts." Sadie held out the packet of receipts. "The note Briggs carries is altered. These payments are missing. Mr. Abel Pike witnessed the original date. Mrs. Finch has church records confirming payment after Clara Val's burial. Mr. Pavey will testify Briggs bragged of owning this valley, one frightened widow at a time." Briggs' face darkened. "You mouthy little." The door opened behind Sadie. Miles stood there, pale, one arm bound, the carved horse in his good hand. "Careful," he said. Briggs sneered. "You hide behind your wife now?" Miles stepped onto the porch. "No, I stand beside her." Sadie felt those words move through her like warmth through frozen ground. The sheriff took the papers. "Read them." His brow tightened. Briggs snapped. "That woman was traded for debt. Her word means nothing." Miles moved before anyone could stop him. Not with violence, with something stronger. He stepped down into the mud, injured and unsteady, and faced the sheriff, Briggs, and the watching riders who had gathered at the gate. "I married Sadie Lawson Drom," Miles said. Sadie's breath caught. "I let fear and debt and another man's cruelty stand where asking should have been. She owed me nothing, not obedience, not gratitude, not her life." His voice roughened, but he kept going. "Before this town and before any law you carry, I say this. The Vale name is hers because I gave it, but her dignity was always hers. Any man who says otherwise answers to me." Briggs laughed sharply. "Pretty speech." Miles lifted the carved horse. His hand shook. "I buried my boy with one horse in his coffin and kept this one because I was too cowardly to let grief be grief. I thought if I never loved again, nothing could be taken. Then Sadie came into my house against her will and made bread, curtains, accounts, courage, and truth out of what I had left." He turned to her then. "I won't bind you with the wrong that brought you here. If you want freedom, I'll give it before every witness present. But I won't let Briggs use your shame or mine to steal this land." Sadie could hardly see him for the tears in her eyes. Briggs lunged for the papers, but the sheriff pulled them back. "That's enough," the sheriff said. "Briggs, you'll come with me to town. These documents need proper looking over." "You fool," Briggs spat. "No," the sheriff said. Just late, when they rode off, the yard remained silent except for a dripping snowmelt. Miles swayed. Sadie caught him around the waist before he could fall. He looked down at her, startled. "You should be in bed," she said. "Yes, Mom." And you should stop making speeches with cracked ribs. Yes, Mom. And Niles. Yes. Her voice softened. I am not leaving in spring. The world seemed to hold still. He swallowed. Sadie, you don't owe me. I know. That was all she said. It was enough. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came in mud, then birdsong, then green shoots beside the porch. The lower pasture stayed theirs after Briggs' fraud was proven. Ellis wrote once from Oregon asking for money. Sadie burned the letter in the stove and made coffee while it turned to ash. She planted the garden Miles had let die. Beans first, then onions, then marigolds, because beauty had its uses too. Miles repaired the porch rail, rehung the shutter, and fixed the dinner bell so it stood straight again. One evening, Sadie found him at the mantel, holding a carved horse. He looked at her. I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. The smile came easier now. Still small, still his. He handed her the horse. Would you mend it? Sadie looked down. The ear? Ear? If you can. She carried it to the table. From a scrap of pine Miles shaved thin, she shaped a small new ear with her knife, sanded it smooth, and glued it into place. It was not perfect. The join showed if one looked close, but it stood. When she gave it back, Miles ran his thumb over the mended place. Ely would fright you, he said. Sadie's throat tightened. I would vive like him. Miles set the horse on the mantel, not hidden in his pocket now, not clutched like punishment, placed where morning light could reach it. Then he turned to Sadie and held out his hand. She looked at it for one breath, then placed hers in his. No music swelled, no church bell rang. The stove ticked as it cooled. A hen complained under the porch. Somewhere in the valley, water ran free over stone. Miles' hand closed gently around hers, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. By summer, yellow curtains lifted in the kitchen breeze. Coffee waited warm on the stove when Miles came in from the fields. Sadie's sewing basket sat openly by the hearth. Bram and Toby ate at the table twice a week, and Mrs. Pevy came by for tea, bringing a jar of peach preserves. Even Mrs. Finch once arrived with an apology wrapped clumsily inside a basket of eggs. Sadie accepted the eggs. The apology took longer. On Sundays, Miles and Sadie rode to church together. People still looked, because people always do, but they no longer looked with pity. They saw a woman who kept accounts sharper than a banker, stitched banners strong enough for mountain wind, and stood straight beside the man she had chosen after first being given no choice. At dusk, they often sat on the porch while the valley turned gold. Miles would carve small toys from pine scraps, not because he was trapped in grief now, but because memory had learned to sit beside life without stealing all the chairs. One evening, he placed a new little wooden horse in Sadie's palm. This one had 2 whole ears. For what, child? She asked softly. For whatever comes, he said, or whoever needs it. Sadie leaned her shoulder against his. Inside, supper waited on the table. Beans, bread fried, potatoes, coffee, and peach preserves, glowing in a chip bowl. The room smelled of wood smoke and clean cloth. The repaired horse stood on the mantel beside the silver watch, no longer a secret and no longer a wound hidden in a pocket. Some love stories begin in joy, and some begin with fear beside a courthouse window. But grief, when finally brought into the light, can make room for tenderness. And in that Idaho valley, where a forced marriage became a chosen home, Sadie Lawson and Miles Vale learned that the heart does not heal by forgetting who was lost. It heals when someone stays, lights the stove, mends what is broken, and says without grandness or demand, "I am here."